So this video is going to cover lesson 6.3, the math thinking and class practice that we're going to do together. Feel free at any point to ask the sub to pause the video. I'm going to try to go through it at a pretty good pace. It might be fast enough that you need to have a little bit of time to pause and catch up writing some stuff down. So we're going to be finding in our practice here, page 6 or lesson 6.3, and we'll get started here. So on the first section here, we're going to be looking at an exploration of equations and lines and kind of how the equation is related to the line. The first thing it's going to ask you to do, and all these questions at the top here are the same, is name 2 points on the line. And what we need to remember here is what we did right back before winter break, was if I have this 0 here, that's the x coordinate. So if I have a 0 as my x, to find my y, I can plug in 3 times 0 minus 1. Well, 3 times 0 is 0, and 0 minus 1 is negative 1. And then if I want to figure out what 1 comma blank is, I'm going to plug in the 1 for my x. So 3 times 1 minus 1. 3 times 1 is 3, and 3 minus 1 is 2. So I have the point 1 comma 2. From there, I'm going to go ahead and graph those points. 0 comma negative 1 is right there. And 1 comma 2 is right there, and I'll graph my line. From there, it is asking us for m. We need to remember that m is the slope of our line, so the rise over the run. I'll start at my leftmost point and do my rise. Looks like I went up 3. And my run, I went to the right 1, which is a positive 1. And so my slope is 3 over 1, or just 3. And then it asks me at what point does the line cross the y-axis, which is right there. That is the point 0 comma negative 1. You see that 0, negative 1 was one of the points we figured out right there. And that is called the y-intercept. So this would be a good time to pause that video and at least try number 2. Maybe take 2 minutes or so and then restart the video and I'll do it with you. Okay, so on the second one, we're going to do the same basic idea here. I'm going to start by plugging in 0 to see what I get for my y coordinate. So negative 2 times 0 plus 3. Negative 2 times 0 is 0. Plus 3 is 3. And then for this one, the x value is 1, so I'll plug in the 1. Negative 2 times 1 plus 3. Negative 2 times 1 is negative 2. Plus 3 is positive 1. And I'll graph those points. 0, 3, and 1, 1. Graph my line. Same thing as before. I want to find the slope. So I'll do my rise, which in this case was a down 2. And my run, which is a plus 1. So my slope is negative 2 over 1, which is just negative 2. And then the point where it crosses the y-axis, or the y-intercept, is this point right here at 0 comma 3. If we scroll down here, we've got the same kind of thing. The big difference here is they've graphed the lines for us because we've got some fractions involved that make it a little bit more difficult. So they've graphed the line negative 2/3 x plus 1. And they want us to find the slope and the y-intercept. So I'll do my slope. Looks like I went down 2 and to the right 3, which is a positive 3. So my slope is negative 2 over 3. The point where it crosses the y-axis is right there. That's the point 0 comma 1. Again, go ahead and pause that video. Try number 4 on your own. And then restart the video in a couple of minutes. Okay, hopefully everybody tried this on their own first. If we have a slope of 2 over 3, we have the equation y equals 2/3 x minus 1. We're going to look for our slope. So I'm going to look at the rise, which is positive 2, and the run, which is right 3. So my slope is 2 over 3. I think we're starting to see some pattern here. That number looks like it was related to our slope. And my y-intercept, where it crosses the y-axis, is at 0, negative 1. Hopefully we're also seeing a little bit of a pattern going on here. But that one might be a little harder to see. So moving right along here, one thing we know here is that all lines have the basic form of y equals x. There's no x squareds, no anything like that. Other things we know about lines is they all have a slope and they all have a y-intercept. Or where they cross the y-axis. And so that leads us to the fact that since every line has a slope and a y-intercept, and those kind of define what the line looks like, right? They tell us how steep the line is and where the line crosses the y-axis. We can write our equation of our line using those two big things. So the equation of a line that we're going to use is called the slope-intercept equation of a line, and it looks like this: y equals mx plus b. And in this equation, the m, just like we've used m for slope before, is the slope of the line. You've started to notice that that number in front of the x, the coefficient of the x, is the slope, and the b is our y-intercept. Now, one thing we always want to really pay attention to here is the x and the y. The x and the y are standing in for points on the graph. So x comma y are points on the graph. Just like when we were doing this where we'd plug in an x and get out a y, plug in an x, get out a y. Those are our points on our graph. Just to do a couple examples here, if I see something like y equals 2x plus 3, then I know my slope is 2 and my y-intercept is 3. Or if I have something like, you probably don't have enough room to write this down, but if I have something like y equals 3x, well, I know my slope is 3. My b, since I don't have anything, we could think, well, it's kind of like a plus 0, so b is 0. A tricky one you might see is something like y equals 3. That's a line too. In this case, our slope is 0 because there's not an x at all, and our y equals 3. So this would be a line that has a 0 slope, a horizontal line. Okay, flipping over to the back, take a second and write down your slope-intercept equation from the other page, and then we'll move on. Okay, so you should have written down y equals mx plus b. And then from there, we're going to go ahead and just write down our slope and our y-intercept for each of these problems. So remember the slope, the m is the number, the coefficient of the x, and the b, the y-intercept here, that negative 3 is part of the 3, so that's negative 3. Go ahead and do those next 5. Maybe pause the video for about 5 minutes here. Maybe not quite 5 minutes, maybe like 3 minutes. And then restart it and we'll go over these. Okay, so on these problems, the m here is negative 4, so the coefficient of the x. B is positive 2. On this one, our m is 2, and our b is positive 1. Over here, there's nothing written in front of the x, but we have to remember that's really a 1, so our slope is 1, and our y-intercept is 1. On this one, again, this is negative x, which means it's negative 1, and then our b is negative 2, our y-intercept. On this last one, the m, the coefficient in front of the x, is a 2. There is no b, so we can think of it like a plus 0, so b is 0. On all of these slope problems, one thing we really want to keep in mind is that if our slope is a whole number, we can always think about it as if it has a denominator of 1. And that's going to be really helpful for doing slopes where we want to think of a rise over a run. Okay. Moving right along here. Next up, they want you to write the equation of a line with the slope and the y-intercept. So if I know that my equation, my line is y equals mx plus b, which you have at the top of your paper, all I have to do is just plug in the slope for m and the y-intercept for b. So it's going to be y equals 2x plus 4. Go ahead and try b on your own. Pause the video for 30 seconds if you need to. Okay, so on this one, we should be really careful with the negative signs. My m is a negative 3, so negative 3x. And I could write this as plus negative 5. But we're not ever really going to do that. Really, we're going to go with y equals negative 3x minus 5. You could certainly write the plus negative 5. It's not really a problem. Okay, and then the last thing down here on this before we move on to the very last section here is identifying the slope and y-intercept of a line from a graph and then writing the equation. So if I'm looking at my graph here, what I need to do is find my rise and my run and write the slope. We know how to do that. So it went up 3 and it went to the right one, which is positive 1. So my slope is positive 3 over positive 1, which is just 3. And my b, because my graph crosses the y-axis right there at negative 4, at the point 0, negative 4. Actually, I think on your paper, it might even ask you for that point 0, negative 4. My b value is negative 4. Then I can write the equation out using my slope, y equals 3x minus 4. For the next one, we'll do the exact same thing. You could pause the video here if you want and try that one before we start. My rise and my run on my graph look like we have negative 6 and a positive 4. Here we do need to simplify, so we can divide both of those by 2 and get negative 3 divided by 2. My graph crosses the y-axis at this point here, 0, 7, which means my b value is 7. And so my equation, I've got y equals negative 3 halves x plus 7. So from a graph, we can look at the y-intercept, we can look at the slope, and we can write the equation of a line. And the last thing we're going to ask you to do is to try that without the graph. And one of the biggest things that they're going to ask you to notice here is that if I have a point like 0, 2 or 0, 5, that is the y-intercept. Because the x-coordinate is 0, it's telling me where it crosses the y-axis. So the first thing we're going to have to do is find the slope. And we need to do that by using our slope formula, which if we remember is this thing right here, y minus y1 over x minus x1. I'm going to write that in here. And I'm going to plug in my points. So I'm going to subtract the two y points, 4 minus 2. I always subtract them from the end. And since I put the 4 in first, I have to do the x's as the 1 first. So 1 minus 0. So when I do that, 4 minus 2 is 2. 1 minus 0 is 1. So my slope is 2. This point 0, 2 is my y-intercept, which means my b value is 2. And then when I plug them into my equation, I have y equals 2, because 2 is my slope, x plus 2, because 2 is my y-intercept. Maybe you should use the number 2 a little less. But anyway. Over here, and do the exact same thing. I'm going to do my y minus my y1 over my x minus my x1. And I'll always plug them in this way, 5 minus 3, and then 0 minus 2. So on the top, 5 minus 3 is 2, 0 minus 2 is negative 2. Well, 2 divided by negative 2 is negative 1. So my slope here is negative 1. From there, my y-intercept is this point 0, 5, which means my b value is 5. And so I can write my equation. Y equals negative 1x, because my slope is negative 1, plus 5, because my b value is 5. So to write the equation of a line, we just need to know the slope and the y-intercept. If we have both of those things, we can put them into slope-intercept form, and that will be the equation of our line that we can use. So from here, your next steps are going to be the proficiency practice on page 11 and 12. If you are done with that, and you did it, I will leave the answer key for you to check with the sub, and then you can go ahead and work on the CFU on the Canvas page. We will be working on that tomorrow, so don't worry too much about the CFU if you don't get there. But make sure you are getting that proficiency practice done and you are using your time today.